Happy Halloween, and welcome to Oh the Humanities, your home for language arts, social studies, and humanity. I'm your host, Mr. Mello, and today I want to talk about Dracula, because I finally read it for the first time, and I have a lot of thoughts. Okay, so in the last video about Coraline, part 1 of our Halloween jamboree, I said that I was kind of a baby when it comes to horror stuff, which is true, I am, but I do make an exception and kind of like vampire stuff. I think vampires are pretty cool. So since I'm pretty interested in vampires, I wanted to read the original Dracula because while it wasn't the very first time vampires ever appeared in fiction, and they've been in folklore like way longer than that, it is where we get like the kind of origin of the modern vampire. Like what we think of as a vampire, a lot of it comes from Dracula by Bram Stoker. Count Dracula is a vampire, which is an undead creature, an evil creature that feeds off of the blood of the living and stalks the night. And he's trying to move from his home country of Transylvania to London in search of new blood. And he succeeds, and then our heroes need to stop him. Now, here's a disclaimer. I have a hard time with books from the 1800s. Maybe it's because I have the attention span of a 10-year-old. What were we talking about? Maybe it's because I have the attention span of a 10-year-old. But I think that books from the 1800s and before, a lot of the time they just use this overly verbose and flowery language. And I really prefer like modern writing, modern starting in like 1920. Where it's more direct, to the point, they kind of just say what they mean. It's clear and concise. Parts of the book I did enjoy. Parts of the book were more of a slog, and some of it was difficult to get through and finish. For me personally, if this is like your favorite book, you do you. One thing I like about this book in comparison to other books from the same time period is that Dracula was an epistolary novel, which I didn't expect going in. Now, an epistolary novel is a book that is written through like journal entries or letters or newspaper clippings. Having the perspective change between different characters and kind of switching from voice to voice did kind of help me get past some of that flowery language, because it felt more like, okay, people are writing their personal accounts chapter by chapter, and it helped me a bit with my terrible attention span to be jumping from perspective to perspective. However, I have criticism with it still, because it led to some funny moments, because the idea is, okay, these people are writing letters or they're writing diaries, and that's what we're seeing. But it led to some like unintentionally funny moments where, I mean, like you have the opening section of the novel where one of the main characters, Jonathan Harker, is trapped in Dracula's castle, and he's scared for his life, and he's like hiding from a bunch of bloodthirsty vampires, trying to write a letter to his wife, like in case he's able to make it out, or in case he doesn't survive and maybe somebody can find this letter. And then he proceeds to like write like 10 to 15 pages, just like immaculately, ornately describing, like in the most complex way possible, like everything that's going on with his dire situation. And it's like, so like I'm just imagining him like trapped in the crawl space, fearing for his life, madly just scrawling, and he's got like a quill, like he has to dip his quill like in some ink probably at this point, just like feverishly, furiously writing like 10, like you would think it would be like a quick thing, like there are vampires, help, and then you would like run away. But he's just like describing everything in so much detail, and just like it took me out of the scene a lot to like picture him doing that. And I understand that it's the writing style of the time, and you kind of have to see it as that. But I found it kind of humorous, mostly because it's supposed to be him writing a letter, but it sounds like Bram Stoker writing exposition, but calling it a letter. And that's another thing, like everything kind of sounds like Bram Stoker here. Even though it's supposed to switch perspectives from all these different characters, and there are a lot of main characters in this book, everybody kind of sounds the same. If there were differences, I couldn't really pick up on them. They all kind of write and speak and talk the same way, so these characters that are supposed to feel distinct and on the surface level seem like they could make up this really dynamic team, they don't. What other things do I like about this book? What do I like about this book? It's not so much that I loved it and was thrilled reading it, it's that I was really interested in seeing how this originated. Let's talk about some of the characters. First off, Dracula was really cool in the first part of the book, and he was this very intelligent, wise kind of creature. He was classy, sophisticated, deadly clever. But then, like, towards the end of the book, you don't really get much more dialogue from him. He's really just a monster to be stopped. And when he comes in, he's just using brute force or his powers. But I was like hoping for some more, like, come on, let's get some villainous monologues here. Let's hear the most interesting character in your book talk a bit more. I wanted more from Dracula himself. The other character. Let's talk about the characters, because I was surprised. I assumed that the character of Van Helsing came later. But I'm picturing like Hugh Jackman, action hero Van Helsing, and I didn't expect like this kindly sweet old professor man. Okay, let's talk about the two really cool characters. Dr. John Seward. He is a total science guy and an early psychiatrist back when psychiatry was very bad. Like, not very scientific yet, but he's a science guy. It's cool because he has all these cutting-edge technologies that he uses to help defeat the vampire that he works with, except, like, instead of, like, if it were made today, he'd be using lasers, but his cutting-edge technology is, oh, you all use a paper diary? I speak my thoughts into this phonograph. Okay, and let's not forget the best character that, I mean, like, it should be a crime if you're doing a Dracula, if you have any kind of vampire in your fiction, this character should have to come, and that's Quincy Morris, who is clearly the best one, and they didn't do enough with him, because on their team of vampire hunters, they have Quincy Morris, an actual cowboy from Texas. Yeehaw! Like, why would you ever not, like, include Quincy? Twilight, it shouldn't have been vampires and werewolves. It should have been vampires and cowboys. Like, let's go. Another thing I found really interesting were Dracula's powers. And this is where, like, I was so wrong about my assumptions going into this book. Because you go into a classic book like Dracula and you assume that you know everything already. But this is like one thing that I was very surprised by to find out. Dracula's powers, which I assumed that vampires kind of pulled like a Superman thing, where Superman originally, when he was first published, only had like super strength and he could jump high. And over the years, they slowly added like heat vision and X-ray vision and flight and all these other powers. I assumed it was that way with like vampires, and there would be like just a very basic little power set. But nope, Dracula can do everything. In fact, I think if anything, over time they've like limited the things they can do, because this man can do like he can conjure all of the animals of the night and just like control not just bats, but like wolves and rats and just everything. Like are chased by like an army of Dracula rats, and he can shapeshift like that. He has like the super strength and the converting other people into vampires. And then all of his weaknesses are there too. I mean, you've got the garlic and the holy water and the like all of the stuff. I mean, it's really already here from the beginning, and a lot of it was probably drawn on the folklore of vampires and other things, but it was interesting to see how much of that has just stayed intact in other vampire fiction just throughout the ages. Bram Stoker uses dramatic irony well. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows something that the characters don't, and that allows us to get tension and suspense, because we know what big of a threat Dracula is. We know what's going on. We know why this ship landed on land and all of its passengers or all of its crew were dead. We know why children have been going missing. We know why there have been these strange animal sightings, and we know what's wrong with Lucy. We know that she's not just dying, but she's going to be turned into a vampire if they don't do something soon. So at the beginning, we know all these things that our characters are still trying to figure out. So we kind of have that effect of like screaming at the characters, like, no, don't go in there. Like, come on, do something. You have to hurry. So that is kind of good. So that's my favorite portion of the novel, is that first bit where they're still trying to figure things out. Should you read Dracula? No. Should you read Dracula? I don't think so. Unless you are a huge fan of vampires and you want to know where it all started. I wouldn't just read Dracula casually. I would study Dracula if you're interested in vampires, in Victorian literature, in where all of these kind of vampire tropes came from. I view it as like a good object of study, a thing to research, but it's not a book that you want to just like kick back with and read casually, because it's a complex read. Again, it has that very Victorian style where it's very flowery, it's very moralistic, that isn't the same kind of thing that we write and enjoy as much today. Thank you for watching Oh the Humanities today. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. I'm Mr. Mello. Have a happy Halloween. Bye-bye. Okay, in case you've never heard of Dracula, Dracula is a vampire. A vampire is an undead creature. It's weird, like, trying to explain the plot of, like, one of the most famous books of all time. Okay,